Remember Aung San Suu Kyi, democracy icon, Myanmar's ousted leader, political prisoner? Well, we've not seen her in more than 5 years until recently when the military-backed government of Myanmar has released some new photographs of her. And Jonathan, there's quite a lot going on with Myanmar at the moment.
Yes, Marika, I mean, the release of those photographs is not coincidental. In the same week, Min Aung Hlaing had this groundbreaking visit to Thailand where relations were fully restored back to where they'd been before the coup. Min Aung Hlaing is on a mission at the moment to win legitimacy. He held this much criticised election earlier in the year. He wants to be recognised as a civilian leader. And countries in the region are beginning to give him that recognition. But that really appalls the many Burmese who still oppose his regime, who argue that he's in essence still a military dictator as he was right after the coup.
And of course, the civil war is still very much ongoing, isn't it? And there were reports of more than 400 killings in the first half of this year alone. So we're asking, is there an end in sight to the bloodiest conflict of Southeast Asia? I'm Mariko in Singapore, and this is Asia Pacific from the BBC World Service. Twice a week, we bring you Asia Pacific stories, unpacked by those who know them best. I have the BBC's Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head. Welcome back to Asia Pacific, Jonathan.
It's great to be back on the programme, Mariko.
And Jonathan, you've introduced me to Tinza Shunlei. She's a Burmese pro-democracy activist based in Thailand. Thank you so much for joining me, Tinza.
Miglawa, thanks for having me.
Tinza, maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience, because I was reading your personal story of how you grew up in a military family in Myanmar, but obviously you've been involved in activism for many years. So can you just tell us your personal journey of how you got to where you are today?
It's been such a very profound and interesting journey for me. Myself, I was born and raised inside the military compound, and I lived there for more than 16 years. My father was a captain, now he's retired, but I live in, I school in a military school, high school, middle school, went to the military hospital. Like everything is all in our own empire that we didn't even have to talk to any civilian outside. So I got to talk to civilians only after I finished my high school and I started attending a university or education when I trained myself to be a high school teacher. So my family is very typical Burmese, Buddhist, majority ethnicity family. So I had no idea about what was happening in the country or like how is life being a minority in the country. But it was only in the university where I learned about different stories from different people and totally shocked me. And I also learned my privileges as being born into the military. I'm not scared of the military man, at least. And then also as a teacher, I was teaching a lot of offense, in my free time at volunteering in a monastery school. And they were all offense and they were all from the conflict affected zones. They don't even speak Burmese. And their life story also changed me and started talking about civil war in the country and then youth activism. Then I started involving in the youth policy development in the country, and all led to my current status that I became a human rights defender. So I try to define my own destiny, that my background cannot define me. And now I'm trying to become, doing more for the people of Burma.
What an extraordinary story, Tinza, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the ongoing conflict and so on. But Jonathan, let's start with the diplomatic visit that took place earlier this month. You have covered plenty of them, but this one was quite unusual, right? The president of Myanmar, Min Aung Hlaing, visiting Thailand. He had the red carpet treatment, some events with business community, all of which are quite conventional diplomatic visit, but it's not because of who he is.
Exactly. I mean, he's one of the most reviled figures in the world. Many people view him as a blood-stained dictator who has driven his country into this catastrophic civil war through his pure ambition, his decision to launch a coup out of the blue after the previous government led by Aung San Suu Kyi had actually won a landslide election. So he's in effect he's been an international pariah while this very, very brutal military regime has established itself. Now, things have changed in the last year. He's doing better militarily. His forces are regaining a lot of ground they lost to the armed opposition, which has broken out all over the country, largely thanks to backing from Russia and China that are giving him a lot of military support and other kinds of support in the country. But the Southeast Asian countries, and Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, so it's sort of what part of the club, have been keeping him at arm's length. Because right after the coup, they summoned him and said, how do we fix this problem, this growing conflict? And he signed a consensus, a 5-point consensus it's called, promising to de-escalate the violence and to negotiate with the opposition. And the moment he got back, he then refused to do it. So the Southeast Asian countries have been saying, well, we can't re-engage with you until you show some willing to try to end this terrible civil war. And Thailand has now broken ranks. It has the longest border with Myanmar, which it argues with some justification means it's got far more at stake in having a relationship and that it needs to have contact with the governing body on the other side of the border. But ultimately, it's likely that other Southeast Asian countries will follow, arguing that if the Myanmar military regime, as it is really, even having held an election earlier this year, is getting the full backing of China and of the other big neighbor, India, then ultimately Southeast Asia will have to accept the reality that it runs Myanmar. But it has really given a big boost to Min Aung Hlaine's legitimacy. He was given the full royal treatment or the full welcome in Thailand. There was no reservation in the way that he was treated when he was here.
Has the Thai government actually explained why they decided to firstly invite him, but also give him that red carpet treatment?
Yeah, they've argued that because of their border problems, a lot of problems spill over the Thai border. You've got transnational crime, you've got scam centers on the other side, huge movements of people. There are probably about 4 million Burmese living in Thailand now. Many of them are exiles like Thinzar who fled from military rule. There's a lot of other problems that Thailand argues it must talk to the government on the other side about, that other countries don't have that problem because they don't have a border with Myanmar. I mean, there is some understanding of that, and that Thailand does need to engage perhaps in a way that Singapore, for example, doesn't. But then a lot of the problems that the Thais say need to be discussed are not even within the remit of the government in Naypyidaw, because the border areas are controlled by armed insurgent groups who in many cases, or warlords, for example, they're the ones actually involved in the scam centers. They're the ones allowing the rare earths mines that are polluting Thai rivers. So in a way, the excuse they have to talk to Min Aung Hlaine and give him this red carpet welcome to resolve these problems doesn't really hold up, because he doesn't have that much power to solve them. But that is Thailand's argument. Deep down, there are interests in Thailand, particularly the Thai military, which is very powerful and has a strong relationship traditionally with the Burmese military, and Thai business that want the relationship back to normal as soon as possible. And frankly, they don't really care about human rights or the atrocities that have been committed by the Myanmar military.
Thinzar, you've been quite vocal about this visit by Min Aung Hlaine to Thailand online. I was reading on your social media post, this visit, you described it as a criminal is allowed to walk on Thailand's red carpet. Can you explain why you felt that way?
It has been such an emotional week for all of us, especially who have been working on the situation and issue in Myanmar, especially when we thought of Min Aung Hlaine. He now changed his uniform and rebrand his group as a government and as a president, and he was marketing himself to the world that please invite me again, I'm someone. But then to us, he is a criminal, not because of what he was doing, what he was responsible. He's responsible for after the 2021 coup, also for the crimes that he committed before the coup as well. There was a Rohingya genocide since 2017, and way before that there was also crimes committed by the military, the Damiral, towards the other minorities, including Rohingya populations. He's wanted his name in different human rights violation record and documentation in the UN report and all of it. So we need to call a spade, that he's a criminal. But the fact that he is welcomed by our neighboring country, not just in Thailand, but he recently visited Laos, he recently visited India, Russia, China, definitely. But in Thailand, where most of us are living in, it's such a betrayal.
I also want to talk about Aung San Suu Kyi because just before this visit, the military backed government of Myanmar released pictures, new photographs of her. Um, Jonathan, I know you described her as possibly the most famous woman in Asia, but in case some of our younger listeners, viewers aren't familiar with why she's such a significant figure in Myanmar, can you just maybe give us a brief history of who she is?
Yeah, I mean, her life story is extraordinary as well. I mean, she lived overseas for a long time. She's the daughter of a man called Aung San, who was the leader of the Burmese independence movement, who fought for independence from Britain and should have led it to independence, but he was assassinated just before independence in 1948. Aung San Suu Kyi was a very young girl then. And later on, when she'd been living in UK and she was married to a British academic and had a family in Britain, she came back to Myanmar to look after her ailing mother in 1988. And it happened to coincide with a major uprising against military rule. The military had been running Myanmar and running it badly in a very brutal way since the very early 1960s. And there was this huge uprising and a movement looking for a leader. And because of her famous family name, they adopted her. Now, she's also, she's overseas educated. She went to Oxford University. She's a very articulate, very striking person with tremendous kind of poise and real charisma, a natural leader. And the other thing about her was that the military then put her under house arrest, and she was under house arrest for 15 years. In the occasionally released, she always refused to compromise with them and stood by the need for a proper democracy. So she became this incredibly potent symbol worldwide of somebody willing to stand up for non-violent advocation of democratic principles. And finally, in 2010, after the previous military government had held another election, somewhat of an echo of what's just gone on this year, they released her. And she led her party, the National League for Democracy, to an astounding election victory, an absolutely sweeping victory in 2015, and then had another victory in 2020. It was possible she could change the constitution, limit military power. The military had a lot of power under the constitution. They ousted her in a coup. And we haven't seen her at all in public since she was deposed. They've kept her strictly isolated. She's now 81 years old. Her health is uncertain, but she still has this enormous iconic power. She's hugely respected. But we have just seen this photograph the military released earlier this month of her meeting the International Committee of the Red Cross, a delegation. That's the first proof of life her family or the wider world has had for more than 2 years. And there's no doubt that the Burmese military decided to show that because I think the Thais insisted on it. Thailand wanted the visit to Min Aung Hlaing to be a success, but they couldn't have risked doing that if they couldn't be sure that Aung San Suu Kyi was still alive.
Now, that's interesting about the timing of the release of those photographs. Tinza, earlier you were talking about the Rohingya crisis, and I remember, at least internationally, Aung San Suu Kyi's reputation got damaged a bit when she was a leader and didn't exactly address that Rohingya Muslim crisis. What's your view on the lady Jonathan describes as possibly the most famous in Asia?
Yeah, she's remained a prominent figure in Myanmar, especially to the generations, especially in the politic field. And I think to myself, she have made an important, impression to me when I was in the military, that I look up to a woman leader, where women sacrifice her life for the people. But later on, when we see a woman who have sacrificed her whole life and being jailed by the military again and again, for many different reasons over times, shouldn't be a politics that we should aspire to. Now the 2021 Spring Revolution is demanding a profound, a better political system where we look beyond beyond the current 2008 political framework, federal democratic principles where we have a collective leadership, not just based on a charismatic leader or person or individuals anymore. So Daw San Suu Kyi was such a figure in my whole life. But then after the Rohingya crisis, I have faced a lot of confusion and frustration, a lot of illusion in terms of moral leadership. When I was advocating myself with my friends and all the civil society human rights defender were advocating for the Rohingya population, she was defending the military at the very court in the ICJ in The Hague, and that broke our heart, you know. So we still have a lot of questions to ask to her when she's released. She's not the only one who's been detained in jail right now. And the military has been detaining more than 30,000 people. Many young people are there and different political leaders from different ethnic minorities groups as well. And military has been releasing some and arresting more. It has been a trap. And then most of the ASEAN leader was saying, oh, military release some political prisoner. But actually, no, they keep arresting more and more dissents. And they killed 3 of my colleagues, you know, on the ground. As soon as they got them, they are arrested. So in a week, we found the news that they've been martyred. They've been martyred on the ground. So these kind of escalation of violence are happening in Myanmar.
But I guess aside from her, you know, you've been involved in the opposition movement, but there's no one to kind of replace her. Obviously, she's such a huge figure to replace, but, you know, in terms of, it's almost like a leaderless movement that is taking place at the moment. Is that the correct definition of it? Like, what's going on? Why haven't they been able to, you know, come up with someone else who can actually lead the movement?
We want to go for a collective leadership where every ethnic groups, you know, should be in the equal positions and equal space, equal participations, and the self-determination for all of us for a true, genuine federal democratic unions, which is a groundbreaking. It would take a long time, but it's on the way.
How would you describe this conflict, Jonathan? I mean, the civil war has been going on for more than 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting listening to Tin Zhao there talking about their aspirations. It's incredibly complex. And Myanmar is a very complex country. It's a very large country, extremely diverse. There have been insurgencies going on pretty much since independence in 1948. The central government has rarely been able to control its borders. There have been these ethnic armies. Some of them have been little more than warlords. Some of them have been involved in things like drug trafficking, human trafficking. Some of them are more idealistic. So that already existed long before the coup. Then on top of that, the young people who rose up against the coup in a non-violent protest movement, broadly called the CDM, the Civil Disobedience Movement, once that was crushed with extreme brutality by the military, making it clear they wouldn't tolerate any peaceful dissent at all, those young people had to flee to avoid arrest and decided, many of them, that we've got no choice, we've got to take up arms. And some of them fled to the border areas to join up with these ethnic armies. And they have different views about their interests. It's extremely fragmented over the whole country. Each conflict has its own dynamic. It's almost impossible to follow. So almost by definition, you can't have a united front, a united leadership to resist the military.
Yeah, when Jonathan was describing the situation in Myanmar, I was thinking about my childhood where I grew up in the military compound. The military and the people around me used to tell me Myanmar situation is really complex, it's really fragmented. Like there are a lot of insurgency, there are a lot of rebels, you know, fighting against the very own army. So we have to defend ourselves. The Myanmar needs the military the most because there are a lot of insurgency and a lot of bad people. You know, like I grew up with all of these. Myanmar is so militarized society where they're looking up a strong leadership. So they don't want to look at women as a leader, and they don't want to look at other different ethnic leaders from different background, like different religions, to be their leader. So I think deep down, this is a true root cause of all the problems. Like for example, in India, it's such a very diverse, cultural-wise, religious-wise. But if they can do it, make it through, you know, the whole independence time after post-colonial period into where they are right now, we can do it, you know. And I think what missing point and the gap in our history is we never had a proper nation building process when we never asked people consent. It's a very basic, very basic political mindset. We need to ask consent from our ethnic minorities and our other different ethnic people. But military never did it. Military always is insecure about, everything.
Jonathan, you mentioned China a number of times. Beijing wasn't too happy, was it, when that coup took place? But as you described, now they seem to side with the military government. So can you maybe explain the role that China plays and also, the rest of Southeast Asia? Because those countries have been trying to stop this fighting, this killing for quite some time.
In an ideal world, they would prefer the coup not to have happened. The China had perfectly good relations with Aung San Suu Kyi's government. It's a very big neighbor sharing a long border. It's inevitable that China's influence will be big. It is interesting seeing how China's changed. China's fundamental concern is its own interests. Myanmar is a very strategic position. It has a lot of resources and natural resources, a lot of rare earths, for example. It's also China's gateway to the Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal. China's built an energy pipeline down to a port there. So I think in the end, China's calculation as this conflict went on was we need to back one side or the other. And they've chosen the military, perhaps because they're easier to deal with, because they are clear, they've got more clear leadership. Thinzar makes a very good point that the military has all these arguments for monopolizing power, but military has been running Myanmar, apart from the 10-year interlude where there was democracy, since 1962, and it's done it absolutely disastrously, not just for the extraordinary brutality and violence, but also the economy. And so I understand why younger people like Thinzar will continue to fight.
Thinzar, you said you're still quite hopeful, despite the visit of Min Aung Hlaing to Thailand, even though it almost feels like Myanmar is turning from this junta military government to, potentially a member of the international or at least regional community that can be accepted by ASEAN. How do you stay so hopeful? How does this all of these latest development make you feel?
All of these ethnic minorities has been resisting the military for more than 7 decades. 7 decades, with or without proper popular support. They made it through. They didn't surrender to the military. And they have that consistency, perseverance, and they have that bravery and courage. These are the elements that give me hope that, okay, we all can do it, Now, the many Myanmar young people are joining these ethnic revolutionary groups because they feel like now it's time that they defend themselves and they define their own destiny.
So, Jonathan, we've been talking a lot about the accusations, criticism against the Burmese government. What does the military-backed government say about all these criticism?
Well, it's surprising how open they are. I mean, I interviewed a senior general who'd been the commander of the Northern Region during the election campaign in Mandalay, and I asked him, why do you bomb schools and hospitals? Now, I expected him to deny it or say it's accidental, it's not deliberate, it's war, this happens. He didn't deny it. He said, because they are terrorists, they're in terrorist areas. They're really unapologetic about what they do to people. They don't hold it back. They actually want people to know they are willing to use extraordinary levels of brutality to crush people. Everything Thinzar says about the military, she's right. It's a unique organization with this tremendous sense of entitlement that because it believes it's holding the country together, that any amount of force is justified and that any scale of human consequences can be tolerated. And I really understand why young people have said we've had enough. We can't even compromise. We have to get them out of politics altogether. As Thinzar was saying, the military is isolated. They're very resentful of the international pressure they're being put under to make concessions on the civil war. But the civil war is having huge, almost catastrophic human consequences. So it's not good for Myanmar that it carries on.
It's always great to have you back on the pod, Jonathan and Thinzar. It was so insightful to hear your story. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Marika. Such an important issue, this.
Thank you for having me.
You've been watching Asia Pacific from the BBC World Service with me, Mariko Oi, in Singapore. If you have any questions or thoughts on what we covered in this episode or any other stories from the region, please leave us a comment below. You can also get in touch with us on email, asiapacific@bbc.co.uk, and click like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. See you next time.